The funeral was extravagant. Black limos lined the street, expensive suits and dark sunglasses filled the chapel. At the front stood him, the grieving husband. A picture of sorrow in his tailored black suit, crocodile tears streaking his face. And right beside him, his billionaire mistress, clutching his arm like a prize. They shared secret smiles behind bowed heads. He thought he'd won, his wife gone, his fortune secure, and his new life already in motion. But just as the priest said, "May she rest in peace," the chapel doors swung open with a thunderous bang. Gasps rippled through the crowd. His confident smile faltered. Cameras turned. Whispers grew into stunned silence. He came to bury his wife and flaunt his new lover. But what happened next shook everyone to their core. This is the story of greed, betrayal, and a funeral no one would ever forget. Hello family, welcome back. Before we begin, I have a small but heartfelt request. Please subscribe. Your support is what keeps these stories alive. Every time you click that button, you're helping us share voices that would otherwise be forgotten and stories that deserve to be heard. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from, because together we are not just telling stories, we are keeping hope alive. The world thought they were perfect. Every magazine photo, every gala appearance, every social post painted the same picture. Ethan and Grace Cole, the golden couple. He was the self-made real estate tycoon with a charming smile and a smooth voice. She was the beautiful philanthropist with a heart for people, and the money to back it up. They were the couple everyone envied. And behind the closed doors of their mansion, everyone would have been shocked to see the truth. It was a Tuesday morning, bright and clean after a light rain. Grace stood in the kitchen, hair tied loosely, wearing one of Ethan's old shirts. She was humming softly while slicing strawberries for breakfast. Ethan walked in, sharp in his tailored grey suit, scrolling through his phone without a glance her way. "Morning," she said gently, looking up with a hopeful smile. He didn't respond, just poured coffee into a cup, black, 2 sugars, the way she used to make it for him. Grace tried again. "I thought maybe we could have breakfast together today." "You've been working so hard and—" Ethan slammed the cup down, cutting her off. "Grace, please." "I have a meeting in 20 minutes. I don't have time for pancakes and small talk." The air shifted. Grace froze for a moment, then quietly turned back to the strawberries. She whispered, "It's been weeks since we've had a meal together." He let out a short, bitter laugh. "You're counting now?" "That's cute." Grace swallowed her hurt. "I'm not counting. I just miss you." That finally got him to look up. His eyes, once warm and full of love, now carried nothing but irritation. "Miss me?" "Grace, I live here. I'm just busy building something real, not playing charity games with crying women." Grace's lips parted slightly. "Those crying women are mothers who lost everything, Ethan. I'm trying to help." "Yeah, well, maybe you should focus on your own marriage first," he said coldly, straightening his tie, "because it feels like the only charity case around here is me." He walked out before she could respond, leaving the smell of his cologne and the sound of her breaking heart behind. That night, Grace sat alone on the couch. The house was quiet, too big, too perfect. She stared at their wedding photo, the one where Ethan was kissing her forehead, whispering, "I'll love you forever." She barely recognized that man anymore. Her phone buzzed. It was Ethan. "Working late. Don't wait up." She typed, "Okay. Be safe," but didn't hit send. She already knew where he was. He'd been working late 3 times this week, and every time he came home smelling faintly of expensive perfume that wasn't hers. Grace put the phone down and whispered to the empty room, "What happened to us?" In public, Ethan was perfect. He smiled for cameras, held Grace's hand, kissed her cheek. People whispered, "They're such a beautiful couple." But behind the cameras, his words cut like knives. At a charity gala a few nights later, Grace gave a short speech about helping abused women rebuild their lives. Her voice shook slightly. Public speaking always made her nervous. When she returned to their table, Ethan leaned close, smile plastered on for the cameras. "You really need to stop mentioning your childhood trauma in public," he muttered through his teeth. "Makes you sound weak. People want to see strength, not sob stories." Grace blinked, stunned. "Ethan, it wasn't about me." "Doesn't matter," he said sharply. "Next time, read your speech to me first. I'll make it sound professional." She smiled tightly for the photographers snapping pictures nearby. To the world, they looked like the perfect team, but under the table her hand trembled. A week later, Ethan attended a high-end investor dinner downtown. That's where he met Victoria Lane. She arrived in a red dress that looked like it cost more than Grace's entire outfit collection. Her presence turned heads. Her confidence made people sit straighter. When she extended her hand to Ethan, her eyes didn't just meet his. They evaluated him. "So, you're Ethan Cole," she said, voice smooth and low. "The man turning old buildings into gold." Ethan chuckled, charmed instantly. "Guilty. And you must be the infamous Victoria Lane. I've read about your acquisitions." She smiled slightly. "I prefer to call them rescues." They talked for hours. She laughed at his jokes, touched his hand just enough to make him feel desired. When the dinner ended, Victoria leaned in and whispered, "Call me. I think we could build something powerful." And from that night, she was in his head. And Grace began to fade from his heart. Ethan came home late, night after night. He started locking his phone. When Grace asked innocent questions, "How was the meeting?" he rolled his eyes, called her clingy, said she was trying to control him. Once, when she tried to hug him from behind while he typed on his laptop, he shoved her hand away. "Don't distract me, Grace. This is business." Her voice trembled. "You don't talk to me anymore, Ethan. You don't even look at me." He looked up, cold and emotionless. Maybe because there's nothing new to look at. That broke her. But she hid it. She always did. She thought maybe if she was patient, loving, gentle, he'd come back. She didn't know he was already gone. Victoria wasn't just rich, she was strategic. She fed Ethan's pride like poison disguised as praise. "You're too smart to be living off your wife's family name," she told him one night in her penthouse. "You could be so much more if you weren't tied down." Ethan smirked. "Grace has money. Connections. I can't just walk away." Victoria leaned close, whispering, "You don't need to walk away. Sometimes life gives you opportunities." He looked at her, confused at first. Then he understood. And he didn't stop her. At home, Grace felt the distance turning into a wall. She reached for him and got only cold air. One night, she cooked his favorite meal, steak, mashed potatoes, the way his mom used to make it. He came home at midnight, reeking of perfume. She waited for him, hope shining in her eyes. "I made dinner," she said softly. "It's cold now, but I can—" "Jesus, Grace," he snapped. "Stop trying so hard. It's pathetic." Her eyes glistened. "I'm your wife, Ethan. I'm trying to hold us together." "Maybe that's the problem," he said, voice dripping with disdain. "You're always trying. Trying to talk, trying to fix, trying to care. It's exhausting." He poured himself a drink, not even glancing at her. "Maybe if you had something better to offer than pity projects, I'd want to come home." She couldn't hold it anymore. "Are you seeing someone else?" He looked at her, smirked and said, "Would it matter?" Her voice cracked. "Yes. It would destroy me." He shrugged. Then maybe stop looking for answers you can't handle. He walked away, leaving her shaking and silent in the doorway. Days turned into weeks. Grace's world grew smaller, quieter, lonelier. Then one night, Ethan came home unusually cheerful. He poured wine, kissed her forehead for the first time in months and said, "I've been thinking, maybe we should update our insurance policies. You know, just to be responsible." Grace blinked, surprised. "Insurance?" "Yeah," he said casually, signing papers, "in case anything happens. You drive a lot, after all." He smiled, that same charming grin that once made her heart flutter. But something in his eyes felt wrong, too calm, too rehearsed. She didn't question it. She wanted to believe maybe he was trying to reconnect. But later that night, as he showered, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. Grace hesitated. She'd never snooped before, but tonight, something deep inside told her to look. She picked up the phone. The message was from Victoria Lane. Her hands shook as she read it. "Once she's gone, you're free. We'll build an empire together." Grace's breath caught. The room spun. Her knees went weak, but she didn't drop the phone. She read it again and again until the words burned into her mind. Once she's gone. Gone. They were planning something. Her husband, the man she gave everything to, wanted her dead. Ethan stepped out of the shower, towel around his waist. "What are you doing with my phone?" Grace turned, pale and shaking. "Who's Victoria, Ethan?" He froze for a second, then sneered. "You went through my phone?" Her voice broke. "You're planning something. Don't lie to me." He stepped closer, his voice low and sharp. "You think too much, Grace. That's your problem." "Tell me the truth," she cried. "Are you going to hurt me?" He leaned in, face inches from hers, eyes cold and empty. "If I wanted to hurt you," he whispered, "you'd already know." She flinched. Tears filled her eyes. He smiled, slow, cruel, calculated. "Now go to bed. You're embarrassing yourself." Then he took his phone and walked away, humming softly. Grace stood there, trembling, staring at the closed bedroom door. For the first time in her life, she wasn't scared to lose him. She was scared of what he was capable of. As thunder rolled outside, she whispered to herself, "He wants me gone." And just like that, the perfect couple was dead. Only one of them didn't know it yet. If you haven't subscribed yet, we'd love for you to join our community by hitting the subscribe button. Through our stories, we build hope and give a future to children and women who have been abused all over the world. Motivate us by subscribing and turning on your notification bell so you never miss a story that matters. Also, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from and how did this story speak to you? Rain fell in slow, heavy sheets that night, painting the streets silver and slick. Grace sat at her vanity, staring at her reflection. Her face looked pale under the soft light, her eyes red and swollen from another night of quiet crying. On the dresser sat a folded letter from the charity gala she was supposed to attend that evening, her foundation's biggest event of the year. She should have been excited. Instead, her hands trembled as she clasped her necklace. From the doorway, Ethan appeared, sharp in a black suit, eyes glinting like glass. "You're still going?" Grace turned slowly. "It's my event. I can't just stay home." He leaned against the frame, arms crossed. "You look tired. Maybe you should rest." "I'll be fine." He smiled, that same smooth, disarming smile that used to melt her. "If you say so." His voice had an odd calmness, too calm. There was something deliberate in the way he spoke, the way his eyes lingered on her. She could feel it. Something was wrong. Grace grabbed her clutch, kissed him lightly on the cheek and said, "I'll see you later." Ethan's lips twitched into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Drive safe, Grace. The bridge gets slippery in the rain." She froze for a second, then nodded and walked out. Outside, her assistant Clara was waiting by the car. Clara was young, loyal, and always eager to help. She held an umbrella over Grace as thunder rolled in the distance. "Mrs. Cole, I already fueled the car," she said. "You sure you want to drive in this weather? I can go ahead and set things up at the venue." Grace hesitated. Normally, she'd drive herself, but the ache in her chest wouldn't go away. Something about Ethan's tone chilled her. She forced a smile. "Actually, Clara, why don't you take my car tonight? I'll follow in the company vehicle. Make sure the decorations arrived on time." Clara nodded, confused but obedient. "Of course, Mom." They switched keys. Grace watched as Clara climbed into her sleek black Mercedes, the one Ethan had personally serviced that week. Grace's gut twisted. She didn't know why, but her heart began to race. As Clara drove off into the storm, Grace followed behind in a smaller SUV, headlights cutting through the rain. The roads were nearly empty. Wind howled across the bridge that curved above the dark ocean below. Grace's hands gripped the wheel tight as she watched the red taillights of her car shimmer ahead through the rain. Lightning cracked the sky, a white flash. Then everything happened in seconds. A loud pop echoed. Clara's car swerved violently left. The back tires screeched, fishtailing on the wet asphalt. Grace's heart stopped. "No, no, no!" The car hit the guardrail. Metal screamed against metal. Then the rail gave way. Grace watched in horror as her car, burst through the barrier and plunged off the bridge into the black waves below. "Clara!" she screamed. Without thinking, Grace slammed her brakes, jumped out, rain drenching her instantly. She ran to the edge of the bridge, eyes wide as she saw nothing but bubbles and broken pieces of guardrail floating below. For a moment, the world went silent, except for the roaring sea. Then she saw it, the faint glow of headlights flickering underwater. She didn't hesitate. She climbed onto the barrier and leapt. The cold hit her like 1,000 knives. She gasped, choking as the current dragged her under. Salt water burned her eyes and lungs. Through the murky waves, she could just make out the shape of the sinking car. Grace fought toward it, pulling with everything she had. Her dress tangled around her legs, slowing her, but she didn't stop. The car was almost gone, just the roof and part of a door visible. She yanked at the handle. It wouldn't budge. She kicked hard, praying, until it cracked open. Inside, Clara was unconscious, her face pale. Grace's fingers shook as she unbuckled her. Bubbles rushed out as she pulled her out into the open water. Her lungs screamed for air, her body going numb, but somehow she dragged Clara upward until at last they broke the surface. The rain hadn't stopped. It slammed down like bullets, blinding her. Grace held Clara's head above the water, gasping, coughing, crying. "Stay with me! Please stay with me!" She tried to swim toward the shore, but the current was too strong. The waves pulled them toward the rocky side of the coast. By the time they reached land, both women were barely conscious. Grace's vision blurred as she crawled onto the wet rocks, dragging Clara beside her. In the distance, she could hear sirens, faint, far away. She tried to call out, but her voice was gone. The last thing she saw before blacking out was the flashing of blue lights above the bridge. By morning, the news broke. Grace Cole presumed dead after tragic car accident. Reporters gathered near the bridge as divers pulled twisted pieces of the Mercedes from the ocean. Grace's purse had been found floating nearby, along with her diamond necklace, the one Ethan had given her on their anniversary. But no body. "Currents that strong can carry a body miles away," one officer told the cameras. "Recovery may take time." Ethan stood by the crash site, perfectly composed in a black overcoat, sunglasses hiding his eyes. Cameras clicked as he pressed a handkerchief to his face, pretending to wipe tears. "She was my world," he said to the reporters, voice trembling just right. "She wanted to help everyone. I don't know how to go on without her." Behind him, Victoria Lane stood quietly in the rain, wearing a black coat, lips tight to hide a smile. That night, the headlines read, "Heartbroken Husband Mourns Grace Cole, America's Angel of Charity." Ethan's act was flawless. The world saw a man shattered by grief. Donations poured into Grace's charity, which Ethan quickly took over to honor her memory. He made public appearances, gave tearful speeches, and wore his wedding ring like a badge of suffering. But behind closed doors, he poured champagne with Victoria in his penthouse, laughing as the city lights sparkled below them. "She really went out with a splash," Victoria joked, swirling her glass. Ethan smirked. "I told you it would work." "No one survives that drop. The current would have taken her miles out." Victoria leaned close, running her fingers along his tie. "You're free now, Ethan. And rich. Don't forget that part." He kissed her, smiling into her lips. Grace always believed in happy endings. They both laughed. Across town, in a dim, small clinic by the docks, Grace opened her eyes. Her body ached everywhere. Her left arm was bandaged, ribs sore, lip split. She could smell disinfectant, feel the stiffness of hospital sheets, and hear the soft beeping of a heart monitor. She tried to move, but winced in pain. The door opened, and a nurse rushed in. "You're awake," the nurse said softly. "Stay still. You're lucky to be alive." Grace blinked slowly. "Clara. She's here." "She's stable," the nurse said. "Fishermen found you both washed up on the rocks before dawn. You've been unconscious for 2 days." Grace's heart thudded painfully. 2 days. Ethan probably already thought she was gone. She turned her head toward the small TV in the corner. The news was on. Her own face filled the screen. Grace Cole, beloved philanthropist, presumed dead after tragic accident. Then it cut to footage of Ethan standing near the bridge, holding a bouquet, tears streaming down. His face, fake, practiced, perfect. Grace's hands clenched the blanket. "He's crying," she whispered. "He's crying for the cameras." The nurse frowned. "You know him?" Grace didn't answer. She just stared, cold and still, as the image of her husband and another woman flashed across the screen. Victoria, dressed in black, standing beside him like a widow in waiting. And then she heard it. The reporter's voice. "Sources confirm the funeral will be held this weekend, though no body has been recovered." Grace exhaled shakily. No body. They'd buried her without a body. That night, she slipped quietly into Clara's room. The young woman was awake, pale but smiling weakly. "Mrs. Cole." "Shh." Grace took her hand gently. "You're safe now." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "I thought we were going to die." "The car, it just went crazy. The brakes." "I know," Grace whispered. "He did it. Ethan did this." Clara's face went still. "Your husband?" Grace nodded. "He planned it. I was supposed to be in that car. You almost died because of me." Tears ran down Clara's face. "What are we going to do?" Grace's voice hardened. "We disappear. For now." She looked out the small hospital window toward the black ocean in the distance. Her reflection stared back at her, bruised, hollow, but alive. "He took my name, my life, and my peace," she said quietly. "I'll take his truth." 2 weeks later, the funeral was held. Black limousines lined the street. White flowers filled the church. Photos of Grace decorated every corner, smiling, kind, beautiful. Ethan stood at the front, a vision of grief in his tailored black suit. He gave a moving speech about love and loss, his voice cracking perfectly on cue. People cried, cameras flashed. "Grace was my everything," he said, hand on his chest. "My heart is buried with her." Victoria stood a few steps away, eyes downcast, hiding her smirk. Everyone believed it. No one noticed the woman standing in the back of the church, face covered with a wide hat and sunglasses. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched her coat. It was Grace. She watched her husband cry fake tears over a coffin that held nothing. She listened to his lies fill the room like perfume. She watched the woman who helped destroy her life play the part of quiet support. And she smiled, not from pain anymore, but from resolve. When the priest said, "May she rest in peace," Grace turned and walked out into the rain. There would be no peace. Not yet. That night, Grace and Clara left the city under new names, helped by a police officer who quietly suspected foul play but couldn't prove it. They moved into a small rented house in a distant town, where no one recognized them. Grace wore a scarf to hide her scars. Her body still ached, but her mind was sharper than ever. Every night she watched the news, seeing Ethan and Victoria smiling, attending galas, showing off their new partnership. And every night she whispered the same promise. "He thinks I'm dead." She looked at the photo she kept hidden in a drawer. Ethan standing beside Victoria, smug and free. Let him enjoy it. Her eyes darkened. Because soon I'll be the ghost that ruins his empire. The rain hadn't stopped all morning. It fell in quiet, steady streams over the black limousines parked outside the towering chapel, the kind of rain that felt like the sky itself was mourning. Cameras flashed as reporters gathered near the gates, umbrellas dotting the scene like dark flowers. Every major outlet was there to cover what they were calling the farewell of the Angel of Grace. Inside, the church glowed with soft candlelight and white lilies. Every pew was full. Grace Cole's family sat in the front row, their faces tight and pale. The rest of the crowd, politicians, actors, donors, reporters, sat in respectful silence. At the very front stood Ethan Cole, dressed in a black tailored suit. His face was the perfect blend of sorrow and dignity. He looked like a man shattered but standing tall for the woman he loved. Beside him, Victoria Lane played her part perfectly. Elegant, demure, her hand resting gently on his arm like a friend comforting a broken man. Her sunglasses hid her eyes, but her faint smile told a different story. The priest began to speak, his voice deep and gentle. Today, we gather not in despair, but in gratitude for the light grace brought into the world. A ripple of sniffles moved through the room. The sound of soft weeping filled the air. Cameras zoomed in on Ethan, the grieving widower, head bowed in reverence. But under that bowed head, there wasn't grief. There was victory. Ethan's hands were steady. His face didn't twitch. Inside he felt calm, almost peaceful. Everything had gone according to plan. No body had been found, but the car, the jewelry, the blood on the rocks. It was enough. The world believed Grace was gone, and now he was the man who had loved her most, the man who lost everything. He looked down at the casket, a casket that held nothing but air and a handful of white roses. A smirk flickered briefly at the corner of his mouth, hidden as he pressed a hand to his face. Victoria leaned close, whispering so softly only he could hear, "You're doing perfectly." He didn't reply, but his silence was answer enough. The priest finished his opening words and gestured for Ethan to come forward. "Mr. Cole would like to say a few words." Ethan stepped up to the pulpit. Every eye followed him. He stood tall, drew a breath, and looked out over the sea of mourners. His voice was soft, trembling just enough to sound human. "Grace," he began, his throat tightening in pretend grief. "Grace was my heart, my reason, my compass. She believed in people, even when they didn't deserve it, especially me." He paused, letting his eyes glisten. The cameras caught it. Reporters nodded, touched. "She was light," he continued, voice breaking in all the right places. "When the world felt dark, she found a way to bring hope. She gave everything she had, not for fame, not for attention, but because she cared." A woman in the second pew dabbed her eyes. Someone whispered, "He adored her." Ethan pressed a hand to his chest. "Grace taught me that love isn't about perfection. It's about patience, forgiveness, and faith. She was my best friend, my everything. He bowed his head. And though she's gone, I'll live every day honoring her name. Silence filled the chapel. Even the priest looked moved. From her seat in the back, a woman in a dark hat and long coat clenched her fists in her lap. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. It was Grace, unrecognizable to anyone there. Her hair was shorter now, darker, her face thinner, touched by scars that surgery couldn't fully erase. Her body still carried the ache of what she'd been through, but her eyes were fierce, alive, burning with quiet rage. She watched her husband, her would-be killer, standing at the altar, lying through his perfect teeth. Every word he spoke felt like another knife twisting into her. Every tear he faked reminded her of the night he told her to drive safe. Beside her, Detective Miles Carter leaned slightly forward. He looked like any other mourner, black suit, head bowed. But his voice was low, deliberate. "You sure about this, Grace?" She didn't look at him. Her gaze stayed locked on Ethan. "Yes," she said quietly. "I want to see the man who buried me perform one last time." Miles gave a slow nod. "We've got enough to take him down already. Insurance fraud, texts, the audio from Victoria's call. You don't have to do this." Grace's jaw tightened. "I do. He took everything from me. My name, my peace, my life. The world needs to see the truth with their own eyes." At the altar, Ethan finished his eulogy and stepped down. People stood, clapping softly in admiration. He returned to his seat beside Victoria. She leaned in close, whispering something that made him smile faintly. They shared a small, private laugh before turning somber again for the cameras. Grace's stomach twisted. It wasn't grief that filled her. It was something deeper, colder. Victoria rested her head lightly on Ethan's shoulder, pretending to console him, and all Grace could think was, "She's wearing the same earrings I gave her at our wedding." The priest raised his hands for the final prayer. "Let us now commend our sister Grace Cole into eternal rest." The organ began to play softly. The air seemed to still, heavy with silence. Ethan lowered his head, eyes closed, expression saintly. Victoria squeezed his hand, a tear slipping dramatically down her cheek. Grace could feel her pulse quicken. The moment had come. The priest's voice echoed through the church. "May she rest in peace." And then, as if on cue from the heavens themselves, the heavy doors at the back of the chapel burst open with a thunderous bang. Every head turned at once. The music stopped. Gasps filled the air. Rain blew in from the open doorway, carried by the wind. A tall figure stood framed by the light from outside, soaked from the storm, hat brim dripping with rainwater. For a long frozen second no one moved. Then the woman stepped forward, slowly. Her heels clicked on the marble floor, echoing like distant thunder. Her face lifted into the light, pale, scarred, but unmistakable. The whispers started like ripples on water. "Oh my God! Is that—" "No, it can't be." Someone near the front dropped their prayer book. Ethan's head snapped up. His body went rigid, his mouth falling open. Victoria's hand slipped off his arm. Her eyes widened in horror. The priest stuttered, crossing himself. The entire congregation stared, speechless, as the impossible became real. Grace Cole stood alive in the doorway of her own funeral. Her voice was steady, low, cutting through the silence. "Sorry I'm late." Ethan's face drained of color. His lips trembled, but no sound came out. She took another slow step forward, her eyes locked on him, her expression unreadable. Rainwater dripped from her coat onto the marble floor as the whispers grew louder, filling the space with disbelief and shock. "Is that really her? She's alive. Grace. Grace Cole." Ethan's chest rose and fell rapidly. His perfect composure was gone, replaced by raw, frozen fear. And Grace, calm and ghost-like, stood there watching him drown in it. The priest finally managed to speak, voice trembling. My God! Grace? But Grace didn't look at him. Her eyes stayed on Ethan. In that moment, the entire world seemed to stop breathing. The grieving husband, the billionaire mistress, the coffin that held nothing. All of it, every lie, every secret, had just come undone. The only sound left was the echo of rain and the distant thunder rolling over the city. And then, with one final step into the aisle, Grace Cole lifted her chin and said softly, "Miss me." The room erupted into chaos. For a long moment, there was no sound at all. Only the soft hiss of rain through the open doors. Grace Cole stood in the doorway, alive, breathing, and very, very real. Her soaked coat clung to her frame, her hat tilted just enough to reveal the pale scar that traced the side of her temple. People stared in disbelief. Some gasped, others whispered her name like it was a ghost story come to life. Ethan didn't move. He just stood there at the altar, frozen mid-breath. His mouth hung open, eyes darting from the casket to Grace and back again. His hands trembled at his sides, and for the first time in his life, Ethan Cole had no words. Victoria's face drained of color. She leaned toward him, her voice a hoarse whisper. "That can't be her. She's dead." Grace stepped forward. The echo of her heels filled the stunned silence. "Do I look dead to you?" The crowd turned, phones lifting in unison as the first flashes went off. Someone began to live stream. Another whispered to a reporter in the back, "Record this. Oh my God, record this." The priest, pale as a ghost, made the sign of the cross. "Sweet Lord." Ethan finally found his voice, sharp, panicked, too loud. "This is a trick. Some kind of sick joke. That woman isn't Grace." He turned toward the crowd, waving his arms wildly. "Someone brought in an actress. This is insane." Grace stopped halfway down the aisle. Her eyes met his, calm and steady. "You recognize me," she said quietly. "You know exactly who I am." Ethan's throat worked as he swallowed, words catching like stones. "No, you're not." She took another step closer. "You buried me without a body. You thought the ocean would keep your secret." Gasps rippled through the room. Victoria took a step back, her hand flying to her mouth. Ethan's face twisted. Grace's voice carried, steady and clear now. "You planned it perfectly, didn't you?" The breaks, the policy, the speech for the camera's reporters pushed forward. Phones recorded from every angle. Every eye was on Ethan. "Stop talking," he hissed, his voice trembling. "You don't know what you're saying." "Oh, I do." Grace reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small silver recorder. "And so will everyone else." She clicked it on. Ethan's own voice filled the chapel, crisp and undeniable. "Once she's gone, we're free. Don't worry, baby. No one will suspect a thing." The sound hit the room like lightning. The crowd erupted in gasps. People covered their mouths. Ethan's eyes went wide. "That's fake! It's edited!" he shouted, desperate now. "She's setting me up!" But no one believed him. Not after the way he looked at her. Not after that single, unmistakable voice. From the back of the church, Detective Miles Carter stepped forward, holding up his badge. "I don't think so, Mr. Cole." Ethan turned sharply, his eyes narrowing. "You again?" Miles's tone was calm but firm. "Detective Carter, LAPD. We've been watching you for months. Life insurance fraud, conspiracy, attempted murder. You've been sloppy." Ethan started to back away. "You can't prove anything." "That recording is just the start," Miles said, nodding toward Grace. She reached into her coat again and pulled out a manila envelope. "Here's the rest. Emails, bank transfers, your signed insurance policy, and text messages from Victoria." Gasps again. People murmured. The flashes from the cameras became a storm of light. Victoria stepped back, shaking her head. "No, she's lying. Ethan, tell them she's lying." But Ethan couldn't. He was breathing too fast, panic setting in. His perfect composure, the charm, the poise, the smooth smile, was gone. Grace looked straight at him. "I loved you," she said quietly. "I would have forgiven anything. But you decided that money was worth more than my life." Ethan's voice cracked. "You were supposed to die." The words slipped out before he realized what he'd said. A collective gasp spread through the crowd. The detective stepped closer. "You just confessed, Mr. Cole." Ethan stumbled backward, knocking over a chair. No, she's manipulating me. This isn't real." Miles nodded to the officers at the door. "It's real enough." "Cuff him." Two officers moved down the aisle quickly. The crowd parted as they approached. Ethan's wild eyes darted from Grace to the handcuffs. He shouted, "She's the crazy one. You all saw. She disappeared. She planned this to ruin me." Grace didn't flinch. "You did that yourself." The officers grabbed his arms. Ethan struggled, shouting, "Don't touch me. I'm Ethan Cole. You can't arrest me here." But they did. Right there at the altar where he just delivered his perfect eulogy. Victoria tried to run, slipping out toward the side door, but another detective blocked her path. "Victoria Lane," he said, holding up a warrant. "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder and insurance fraud." Her sunglasses slipped off as she spun around, fury and panic twisting her face. "You can't prove anything." Grace's voice came soft but lethal. "Your messages prove everything." Victoria froze. Ethan stopped struggling for a moment, his face twisted in rage and disbelief. "You think this makes you better than me?" he hissed at Grace. "You should have stayed dead." Grace took a step forward, her eyes cold. "You killed your own soul long before you tried to kill me." The room went silent again. Even the rain outside seemed to pause. Ethan's shoulders sagged. The fight drained from his body. The officers led him down the aisle, cameras flashing as reporters shouted questions. "Mr. Cole, did you plan your wife's murder? Victoria, were you involved? Grace, how did you survive?" Grace didn't answer any of them. She just stood still, watching as the two of them were led out into the daylight. The man who tried to bury her and the woman who helped him do it. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She simply breathed. The detective came to stand beside her. "It's over," he said softly.